The visitor who came most often and troubled me most deeply was Ravan. Sometimes he came dressed in full royal regalia, displaying his 10 heads, each topped by a sparkling crown. On these occasions, he would be accompanied by courtiers and musicians, dancing girls, and vassals bearing precious gifts, caskets spilling over with jewels of many colors, the likes of which I had never seen before, or stringed instruments from Indra's court that played on their own haunting celestial melodies. Gardeners carried shrubs whose names were unknown to me. Somehow, Ravan had learned that I loved plants and he filled the spaces around my Ashoka tree with an embarrassing abundance of exotic and fragrant varieties, some of which he told me had been brought for me from as far away as the foothills of the Himalayas or from Kusadwepa, which lay on the other side of the earth. Greater favors, he hinted, awaited me if I became his wife. I would close my eyes and turn my back on him. I would press my face against the Ashoka tree trunk, feeling it vibrate in helpless sympathy. I would put my fingers in my ears, but even that did not good. His Asura magic was such that his words travelled directly to my mind. The visits always ended with him listing in a calm and melodious voice the dire consequences if I did not agree to become his queen soon. He would give me to his gods to devour. He would turn me over to Shurpanaka to do whatever she wanted. He would drown me slowly in the sea while the monsters that guarded Lanka tore at my limbs. He would chop me into pieces and send them to Ram as a gift. Each scenario, I confess, was terrifying, especially when described in Ravan's hypnotic tones. I tried to block them out by desperately repeating the chant I had heard on a long ago happy day in the palace of Ayodhya, the day of the coronation that never happened. Sitaram, 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 Sitaram. At other times, though, Ravan came alone, dressed so simply that he could have been mistaken as a householder in some small town. He dismissed my Rakshasi guards and sat on the ground bareheaded. He did not threaten or beg me on those occasions, but told me instead stories from his life. How many hardships he and his brothers had suffered growing up, often going to bed hungry, his little sister crying because his mother had been abandoned by his father, the sage Vishrava, who, as a holy man, should have known better. Her family didn't help them either because they had been against the aliens in the first place. Finally, his mother put aside her pride and went with her children to the court of their half brother Kuber to ask for help. Kuber was rich beyond measure, the treasurer of the gods. He could have turned their lives around in a moment. But he insulted her and the children, illegitimate spawn. Looking at his mother's stricken face while his siblings cowered around him, not knowing what they had done wrong, Ravan's heart broke into pieces. He called out in his sorrow to the gods to aid him, to punish Kuber for his cruelty. But they too ignored him. That was when the desire for revenge bloomed in my veins, Ravan said, speaking meditatively, as though he had forgotten I was listening. I decided to become stronger than Kuber, to wrest his kingdom and his wealth. The gods, too, I hated for their indifference to my family's sufferings. I promised myself I would make them beg for mercy and learn how it feels to have their pleas cruelly ignored. I went to the Himalayas to perform austerities. I meditated on Brahma, the Creator, sitting neck deep in freezing mountain streams, standing for years on one leg. Finally, despairing, I lit a fire and began to chop off my heads one at a time and offered them into the flames until only one head was left. That too I was ready to cut off. What use was life if I had to leave it as powerless as a worm? I kept my face covered in my increasingly tattered sari, but I listened, fascinated in spite of myself. I imagined as Ravan spoke, Brahma finally arriving in a shower of light, giving the emaciated young man with blazing eyes the boons he was ready to die for. Invincibility, infinite power, so that the gods would cower before him. Everything short of immortality. I visualized Ravan's invasion of the heavens, the great and tumultuous clash of the Asuras and Devas, until at last he wrested the celestial throne from Indra. I was not too displeased. In spite of the Sudha he had brought to me, I had my reservations about Indra's morality, his qualification to be the ruler of the heavens. Additionally, he hadn't sent me the dreams he had promised. I could have remained in Swarga on Indra's throne, Ravan said. But I got bored. I missed our beautiful, imperfect earth, the trees and the clouds and the birds singing, the winds and the ocean, even the blazing sun. I came back to Lanka and took it from Kuber. It was like snatching a child's toy and made it more beautiful than it had ever been under him. I became a good king and a fair one. My subjects may have feared me at times, but they loved me too. I had more wealth and wives than I had ever dreamed possible. The only times I left my beloved Lanka were when I went on conquests or to see my dearest Lord Shiva, who was the only one in the pantheon that revered up among the icy peaks in Kailash. Ah, yes. And once I went to Mithila to try and win a bride. So he remembered that. But why was he telling me all these things? Did he want my sympathy? Was he, unbelievable as it seemed, lonely in this fabulous palace amid all his loyal subjects, in spite of the beautiful females he doted on him? Or was it a rare opportunity for him to look back on this life and ruminate on the unusual trajectory it had taken? And what was the enchantment in his voice that forced me to listen and, though I would have died before I admitted it to anyone, feel a strange sympathy for him? Why, when he spoke like this, was I unable to hate him? Once, when I was in Kailash, Ravan continued, visiting my dearest Lord, I decided I would bring him to Lanka so that I would have him close by all the time. The weather is so much better here, I thought. He would enjoy that as well. I decided to uproot the mountain, such was my ego, and carry it back on my head along with Lord Shiva and Goddess Parvati. Well, I had barely pulled up a corner of the mountain when the Lord, to humble my pride, pressed down with his little toe and trapped me under Kailash. Ah, the agony. I can't even try to describe it. None of my battle wounds came anywhere close. He was right to do it, of course. In my despair, crushed in the darkness, my bones pulverized by the monolith of the mountain, I began to pray. I composed a song to Shiva's glory as the cosmic dancer, and in his magnitude, he forgave me. Humming the words, Ravan drifted off into the night. He seemed to have forgotten my existence, but the words reverberated through me long after he had gone, forcing me into reluctant admiration of their pulsing images, their ecstatic beauty. जटाटवी गलज्जलप्रवाहपावितस्थले गलेवलम्ब्यलम्बिताम्बुजङ्गतुङ्गमालिकं डमड्डमड्डमर्निनादवड्डमर्वयं चकार चण्डताण्डवं तनोतु नः शिवः शिवम्. What a paradox the king of the Asura was. I dreamed that night of the ecstatic dance of Shiva, his matted locks flying around his face, his serpent garlands, and the enchanting pulsing of his drum, which could create the world or destroy it. I remembered something I had forgotten. Shiva's bow had promised me that in my darkest need, the Lord would come to help me. Where are you? I called to him with all my heart's desperation. I need you so much. Please come soon. Tonight, after a long time, there was a moon, full and golden. I don't know how it got past the Rakshasa darkness, but I was thankful. I gazed at it longingly, remembering my nights with Ram in the forest, how the moonlight had rained down on our tender little hut. How my husband's skin had glowed in its beams like shining honey. How we conversed late into the night. We talked about everything: politics and statecraft, the roles of husbands and wives, and what would we eat the next day. How many months had passed since I was in captivity? I had lost track. Surely it was almost year end when my fate would be decided. Ram, I cried silently because I did not wish to give my gods the satisfaction of seeing me weep. Will I ever see you again? I didn't doubt that he loved me, but the odds of my rescue, as my gods reminded me mockingly each day, seemed insurmountable. He was just a man, after all, even if he were the best among men. I heard procession music in the distance. A wedding, I hoped, because the other possibility was far worse. But it was no wedding. It was, as I had feared, Ravan come to cajole me again. I turned my face and pressed it against the rough bark of the tree trunk. The Ashoka shivered in response. Something we both sensed was worse than usual tonight. I knew it as soon as Ravan spoke, his words slurring as he greeted me. He was heavily intoxicated. I had known from overhearing the gossip of the Rakshasis that he drank. They had spoken admiringly of the amazing amounts of sura he could consume without it affecting his sharp intellect, his battle skills. Tonight was clearly an exception, and I could tell by their uncertain greetings that they weren't used to seeing him this way. Turn Sita to face me. How dare she ignore me while I am talking to her? My gods were more than happy to oblige. Someone grabbed my shoulder in her claws and yanked me around roughly, not caring that she scraped my skin. Another Rakshasi held my chin in a vice grip, while a third parted my eyelids, forcing me to look at Ravan, dressed in all his finery and accompanied by 100 wives and handmaidens. Even his Yakshini gods were with him today. The Asura king's bloodshot eyes were fixed on me unblinkingly. The hot longing in them frightened me more than if he had railed at me in anger or hatred. Sita, he said, who are you really? Because surely you cannot be a mere human. Are you an enchantress sent by Indra to drive me insane? Are you a witch from the dark caverns of the underworld? How have you managed to capture my heart like this? All day I can think of nothing but you. My kingdom suffers because I can't pay attention to matters of state. I have antagonized many of my counselors, even my dear younger brother, by refusing to give you up. It pains me to think of you dressed in your rough bark, your hair uncombed and tangled, sleeping on the cold, hard ground. Why won't you accept any of my gifts? But even so, you are more beautiful than the best dressed damsels in my palace. Please end my misery. Become my queen, queen of Lanka and queen of my heart. One word from you, and I will banish my other queens and never look at another female again. Nausea rose in my throat at the images his words conjured, overcoming all caution. Ram is my entire universe, I said, pronouncing each word deliberately. I have given him my heart, all of it, forever. I should have stopped there, but the moon madness was in me too. I spat on the ground. And you? What makes you think that I would ever look at you willingly? That I would endure your touch with anything other than disgust? If Ram is a lion, you're a dog. If Ram is fragrant sandalwood paste, you're gutter mud. Enough. Ravan's voice was so loud, it sounded as though earth herself was splitting in two. The Rakshasis around me fell to the ground in terror. I looked up and saw that he had transformed himself into his 10-headed shape. He had grown to twice his size and was now clad in a dark, shining armor. Each of his heads scowled ferociously at me, grinding its teeth. He brandished a huge curved sword, its serrated edge glittering avidly. I have made my decision. If I can't have you, then no one else will. I will kill you right now and throw your body to the jackals that prowl the cremation ground, and they will tear it apart. Bereft of lost rights, your spirit will wander Lanka forever, regretting your folly, and I will be free of this torment. I closed my eyes. My body was stiff with fear, and yet there was relief too. The moment I had alternately dreaded and longed for had finally arrived. At least now I would escape the constant heartache I had suffered ever since I arrived here. And Ram wouldn't have to risk his life for me. My only regret was that I would die without seeing my beloved one last time, that I wouldn't be able to tell him how much I had suffered and how all through that suffering had remained true to him. They say that we are united in our next life with what we think of at the moment of death. I decided to focus my heart on Ram. Surely that intention would be more powerful than any lost rights my body was deprived of. I called up his face, noble and stern, but also, in our intimate moments, so vulnerable. Ill fortune tore us apart in this life, dearest, I said in my mind. But with all my strength, I pray that the next time around I will be your wife again, for I can't think of a better fate, as inseparable from you as a flare from its lamp. Lost in my thoughts, I had blocked off my surroundings. Now I became aware that I was still alive. That gruesome, serrated sword hadn't separated my head from my body. How could that be? I opened my eyes to see Queen Mandodari struggling with Ravan. Where had she come from? And why was she here today? Unlike his other wives, she never accompanied Ravan on his visits to me. And such was her power and possibly his respect for her as his chief consort that he never subjected her to that indignity. Please, my lord, she pleaded, her breath coming in gasps, her jewel encrusted saree in disarray. You are a great warrior. It is unbecoming of you to kill a defenseless woman, no matter how much she has provoked you. Your reputation in all the three worlds, Sarga, Martha, and Patal, will be ruined. Even your dead ancestors would be ashamed of you. I call upon you to remember who you are, ruler of the greatest kingdom on earth, vanquisher of Indra, devotee of Shiva, learned in all the Vedas. Act with the dignity appropriate to your station. You have promised this woman 1 year of immunity. Don't break your promise. At the end of the year, you can sentence her to whatever punishment you see fit. As your greatest well wisher and mother of your firstborn, I beg this boon of you. She kneeled in front of him, hands joined in prayer. Every single person in the Ashoka forest, myself included, held their breath. After a long moment, Ravan handed his sword to one of the Yakshnis standing near him. He inhaled deeply and transformed back to his usual appearance. Bending forward, he raised Mandodari from the ground. You have always been my best, most trusted counselor, he said to her tenderly. You know you have a special place in my heart. Led by my passions, I don't always listen to you, but today I will. Thanks to you, Sita is safe, at least for now. He threw me a last burning glare and left the grove. Mandodari, too, sent me a glance as she left. It was quick and covert and complicated, but I saw the mingled love and pain and horror in it, and I understood. Whatever the truth of my birth might be, in Mandodari's mind, I was her long lost daughter, her cherished and guilty secret. She feared the havoc my presence would wreak on her kingdom and beloved husband. Yes, she continued to love Ravan no matter how many women he brought to Lanka. Sometimes the river of love followed a complicated course. At the same time, she couldn't help doing everything she could do to protect me. Thanks for listening. Now some word power. Sometimes he came dressed in full royal regalia, displaying his 10 heads. Regalia, regalia means the ceremonial symbols of monarchical authority like crown, scepters, and ornaments. On these occasions, he would be accompanied by courtiers and musicians, dancing girls, and vassals bearing precious gifts, caskets spilling over with jewels of many colors. VASSAL, vassal means a subordinate. But Kuber insulted her and the children illegitimate span. Looking at his mother's stricken face while his siblings cowered around him, not knowing what they had done wrong, Ron's heart broke into pieces. COWER cover means crouch down in fear. The only times I left my beloved Lanka were when I went on conquests or to see my dearest Lord Shiva, who was the only one in the pantheon that I revered up among the icy peaks in Kailash. PANTHEON pantheon means all gods of a religion collectively. And what was the enchantment in his voice that forced me to listen and, though I would have died before I admit it to anyone, feel a strange sympathy for him. ENCHANTMENT enchantment means a feeling of great pleasure, delight, magic. Well, I had barely pulled up a corner of the mountain when the Lord, to humble my pride, pressed down with his little toe and trapped me under Kailash. Humble one's pride means to reduce or diminish one's sense of self importance, arrogance, or excessive pride. In my despair, crushed in that darkness, my bones pulverized by the monolith of the mountain, I began to pray. PULVERIZE pulverize means reduced to fine particles. Monolith MONOLATH monolith means a large block of stone. What a paradox the king of the Asura was. PARADOX paradox means a person or thing that combines contradictory features or qualities. I didn't doubt that he loved me, but the odds of my rescue, as my gods reminded me mockingly each day, seemed insurmountable. INSURMOUNTABLE insurmountable means too great to overcome. But it was no wedding. It was, as I had feared, Ravan come to cajole me again. CAJOLE cajole means persuade, coax. I knew it as soon as Ravan spoke, his words slurring as he greeted me. SLUR slur means speak words indistinctly so that the sounds run into one another. Slur means mumble. Someone grabbed my shoulder in her class and yanked me around roughly. YANK yank means pull with a jerk. I have antagonized many of my counselors. ANTAGONIZ antagonize means cause someone to become hostile or angry. Nausea rose in my throat at the images his words conjured. NAUSCA nausea means a feeling of sickness or discomfort in the stomach that may come with an urge to vomit. CONJURE conjure means implore someone to do something. I should have stopped there, but the moon madness was in me too. Moon madness means the persistent belief that the moon and its phases influence human behavior, particularly